The public hearing for item number 60 is now open. Item 60 is a motion to enact ordinance creating the Broward County Racial Equity Task Force and creating Article 7 of Chapter 1 of the County Code of Ordinances. We have 19 members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
Okay. Members of the public, because there are more than 5 speakers, you have 2 minutes each to speak. That will keep time. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, you will hear a bell, at which point your time is elapsed. AT&T operator, please call the first speaker.
Hello.
AT&T
Hello,
operator.
Turner. Hello, Turner, your line is unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say welcome and thank all the commissioners for allowing me to speak, especially Dale Holness. What I'd just like to say is
sir,
when looking at...
Okay. I apologize. Commissioner Holness indicated desire. Okay, go ahead and finish, sir. But after AT&T operator, after this speaker is finished, please do not call the next speaker immediately. Sir, please continue and start his time over.
Okay. Okay. All right. So my name is Bilal Shabazz, and I represent American of Descendants of Slavery organization here in Broward County. We're a grassroots organization. We have chapters all over the United States. And basically what I just wanted to kind of review really quickly was that there was a study that was done by Dr. Sandy Darity, who is one of the leading intergenerational wealth transfer professors here in the United States. He's been on TED Talks and whatnot. And he has a book out called From Where Do We Go From Here? Equity, dealing with the whole issue of reparations for Black Americans who are descendants of slavery. So when looking at this particular item, I just want to make sure that we're all understanding who the focus group should be and what the issue is that there is a color of wealth study done in Miami where it talks about the different aggregates of ethnic groups within the Black community and how those Blacks who descended from American slavery are always at the bottom, no matter if you're in Los Angeles, no matter if you're in Boston or here in Miami. In Miami, the liquid wealth assets of Black Americans who descendants of slavery is $11. When we look at Haitians are about 2,000, and Jamaicans and so on and so forth is just up. So what my point is that I see this racial equity task force being put together, but we just want to make sure that those people who've been here since this country was incepted back in 1776 and who are still suffering, went through Jim Crow and went through all these other things, are being represented, and that their issue is being addressed, because not every Black person that's here in this country had to go through the things that the Blacks who descended from American slavery had to go through. And if we look at what happened in 1964 during the Immigration Act that Lyndon Johnson put in place, when we look at the number of Blacks who were in the United States that came from other countries, it was to the right.
Sir, you need to begin to wrap up your remarks.
Yeah, so clearly I just want to make sure that when we choose this 35-member board, or the people who are choosing this 35-member board, that there is representation, adequately represented from the people who are really suffering. And not all Black people are the same. You know, some of us come from this country or have been here
Sir,
since
you
the
need to wrap
inception, and
up
some
your
of
remarks.
us come much later. Thank you. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Holness, did you wish, you had previously indicated
Since we
you wanted to
started
speak
on the speaker,
before.
let's go ahead and continue with the speakers. After they're finished, I'll make my statement.
Yes, sir. All right. AT&T operator, please continue with the speakers then.
Christopher Bates, your line is unmuted.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Christopher Bates. I'm a proud third-generation Floridian, and I am chair of the board of the directors of the Pride Center at Equality Park, the largest LGBTQ community center in the state of Florida in Wilton Manors. As a 69-year-old Black gay man, I'm acutely aware of the race-based challenges confronting members of the LGBTQ community in general, but I'm also a part of the lived experience of Black LGBTQ citizens in Florida and in Broward County. The challenges of LGBTQ citizens include rejection by family, friends, and bullying and isolation in schools, including institutions of higher learning. The LGBT community most often confronts discrimination in employment, housing, healthcare, and accessing social service agencies as well as programs. Structural barriers, as well as policies and practices that discriminate and disenfranchise LGBTQ citizens in this county must be removed. Thank you for this opportunity to make this statement to the Commission as you consider the motion to create an advisory board on racial equity in Broward County. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, sir. AT&T operator, next speaker.
Cindy Sitzer, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Commission. My name is Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer. I'm the President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County, and I am calling in support of the creation of this task force. The Children's Services Council has long been committed to the racial equity and has partnered with the County Human Services Department on bringing racial equity trainings and a commitment to anti-racist policies throughout Broward County. I know there are some discussions about adding other groups to this task force in terms of focus. I would encourage the Commission to not water down the focus on racial equity by adding other groups that are frequently disenfranchised. While it is important to take a look at what's happening to other groups, including those with special needs, who we also have a longstanding commitment to, it's important for the racial equity focus to stay in racial equity and to use other opportunities to look at other disenfranchised groups. So I want to applaud the Commission for looking at this issue. I also really want to applaud Commissioner Holness for amending his proposal to include a baseline level of training and knowledge for all members of the Commission, of the task force, because we all need to be speaking from a common language and a common focus in order to truly advance the work. Thank you.
Thank you, AT&T operator. Next speaker.
Dr. Elaine Davis-Jerome, your line is now unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Hear me?
Please. Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, County Administrator, and all. I am Dr. Eileen Davis-Jerome, speaking for enactment of the Racial Equity Task Force. I am President of Broward County Chapter of the United Nations Association, USA, Southeastern Regional Representative for UNA USA's National Council, a member of the World Federation of UNA's Committee, and I'm a member of the Broward County Human Rights Board and the Racial Equity Committee of the board. I'm also a member of the Broward Refugee Task Force, an international educational consultant and founder for Institute for Multicultural Education. UNA Broward volunteers work with the community and elected officials to inform, inspire, and mobilize others to support the principles and vital work of the UN. The UN has supported Black Lives Matter. We are nonpartisan. We advocate for quality education, social justice, labor, economic development, energy, and climate. We provide support for education regarding diplomacy, development, and defense abroad. and we support human rights close to home. We want to be sure that the Equity Task Force Committee goes forth and that they embrace the global goals of the UN so that, as others have mentioned, within the community task force, we have included those people who are most affected by the inequities, disparities, and we want to be sure that we think globally and act locally. The globe, the world, is watching Broward County. We want to make sure that
Ma'am, you
we
need to begin
advocate
to wrap
put
up
an
your
end to
remarks.
voter suppression and criminal justice, healthcare, education, employment, and so on. The 17 goals of the UN should cover the ethnic group that we are looking at in as broad a way as possible. I marched
Ma'am, you
with
need to
Dr.
wrap
Martin
up your
Luther King
remarks.
as child foot soldier, and I am marching for the enactment of the Equity Task Force in Broward today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, AT&T operator.
Karen Boutros, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Karine Boutros. I'm the Executive Director of the Broward Workshop, which is a business organization that's main goal is to work collaboratively with both public and private partners in the community to make Broward a better place to live. And this task force is very important. It falls in line with our goals. And on behalf of Keith Koenig, our chairman, I'd like to thank you for including the Broward Workshop in this task force. I would also like to share with you that the workshop has created our very own Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee that is chaired by Juliet Rolhack and Sean Davis. We have established statements and goals that we will share with you after the new year. And we want to thank you again, Commissioner Holness, for bringing this up. And we look forward to working with all the other community stakeholders and the county on this extremely important issue that needs to be taken care of in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. AT&T operator, next speaker.
Linda Harris, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Linda V. Harris. I am the co-chairwoman of the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, the chairwoman of the Women's Business Council, and a 20-year business owner in South Florida. I would ask that you support this task force. You know, as much as we would like to believe or wish there's equality and accessibility and access to capital, the evidence and all the studies suggest that that's just not the case. To not support this task force would give the appearance that Broward County is either ignoring the evidence, don't care about the facts, and has no interest in working towards inclusion for all of its citizens. And I don't believe that's the case. I thank you very much for this time, and I look forward to working continuously in the beautiful city of Broward County.
Broward County. Thank you, ma'am. AT&T operator, next speaker, please.
Michael Rayner, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning again, Mayor and Commissioners. Mayor, before you start my time, if I could just, you might want to suggest to members of the public not to participate by speakerphone. It will cancel out your direction when you're trying to let them know their time is up. It's happened to me in the past a few months ago, so that may be just a helpful hint.
Thank you.
Michael Rayner, I just want to urge on this item that there be a seat for LGBTQ representation. As noted by Christopher Bates, the issues of the LGBTQ community for people of color, certainly there's a rate of higher disparities within the people of color community. At the last commission meeting where this item was discussed, there were discussions around discrimination. I just want to remind the board, when it's formed, that the Human Rights Board does look at issues of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation, and I ask that as the task force looks at those issues, that it brings in the Human Rights Board or any other county advisory board when it has a discussion on an issue that might fall under that advisory board, so we can work together in partnership in addressing issues. And I just want to thank the Commission. And the last item, actually, in our Human Rights Board meetings in the past, there were concerns that when you're dealing with racial equity, that it's not, while we understand there's a greater rate of anti-Black racism out in the community and the world, that this also addresses for Asian Pacific Island community, Latinos, and others. And so we just want to make sure that it's intentional in some of those dialogue and conversations as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. AT&T operator, please call the next speaker.
Mike Gillen, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mike. Good morning. My name is Mike Gillen. Tamarack resident, city commissioner, small business owner, and we helped get Juneteenth passed. So I established and got Juneteenth passed in the city of Tamarack, and that's one step towards acknowledging racial equity. Acknowledging racial equity is just acknowledging Black people, our past, our suffering, and our independence, which is not the 4th of July for Black Americans. Establishing a task force is the bare minimum. We need to do more than that, and other public agencies are doing more than that. And I would encourage Broward County government to become a member of the Local and Regional Government Alliance on Racial Equity, which is a national network of government working to achieve racial equity and advance opportunities for all. There have been studies done by J.P. Morgan Chase that's investing $30 billion in the Black community, Citigroup, McKinsey, one of the most successful consulting companies in the world, that talk about the negative impacts of racial equity or the lack thereof in the Black community and also to the national community. In Citigroup's study, they demonstrate that if we had fair opportunities, it would have a positive impact on the GDP. And finally, in closing, when Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson took over mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, he made sure that there were small and minority business policies so that gave Black businesses a chance to succeed. And that completely changed the landscape for Black Americans in the city of Atlanta. And finally, a gentleman did speak earlier about different Black people in the South Florida community. As a Haitian American, I've benefited from the sacrifices of African Americans that came before me, and we do need to make sure that we give some priority to African Americans who have truly suffered historically under the racism in this country. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. AT&T operator, next speaker, please.
Nancy Medler, your line is unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the mayor, vice mayor, and the county commission. My name is Nancy McCayer, and today I'm speaking on the behalf of the Racial Equity Task Force in full support. Racial equity is an urgent issue, not only for the country as a whole, but here too in Broward County. Now more than ever, we have a role in ending racial injustice, racial inequality, and systematic racism. We are seizing the opportunity to tackle this complex issue and not shy away from it. It is not enough to not be racist. We must actively be anti-racist. Black Lives Matter. And we must resolve the negative impact that systematic racism has had on the experiences of our communities. The recent death of George Floyd in Minnesota and Breonna Taylor in Kentucky are a repeated pattern of violence against and dehumanization of Black Americans in the United States. A racial equity task force will join calls from people of all backgrounds and communities for meaningful action and can create change to address the systematic and deep-rooted discrimination and racial inequalities that communities of color continue to experience. Thank you, and have a great morning.
Thank you, ma'am. AT&T operator, next speaker, please.
If there is anyone who pre-registered on the line and still would like to make a statement on item 60, please press #2 to raise your hand.
AT&T operator, there are 3 speakers listed on item number 73. That was this item on the last agenda, so they are actually registered for this item. So please unlock or please unmute the 3 speakers on item number 73 on the written list.
Absolutely. Basil Bernard, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. This is a great issue, very important to our community. And it's not so much for blame, it's more finding a remedy for an economic disparity that has been around for quite a while. We don't need not rehash it. It's access to the opportunities that are there and not feeling like we're invisible in the room when the decisions are being made for contracts. We just want equity. Time brings relationships, and we believe in forging those relationships that will get us ahead. And all we have to do is just look at sports. If there was an ill or a foul committed, then there is need for monitoring so that those same mistakes don't happen again, and that there is some kind of remedy for the person who the foul is committed on. In short, what Commissioner Holness has brought forward, now the mayor, is very, very important. And if there is a task force to monitor, then there is an opportunity for people who are wronged to come forward and say, this is my grievance, this needs to be addressed, because we know it happens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. AT&T operator, next speaker.
Marcia Smith, your line is unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor Geller, Vice Mayor Udine, Commissioners, County Administrator, and staff. My name is Marcia Barry Smith. I'm Director of Government Relations, Policy, and Advocacy for Habitat for Humanity of Broward, as well as the Chair of the Broward Housing Council. Last month, I spoke in support of this ordinance. At the time, I failed to mention and recognize the wonderful work already being done in this county by so many dedicated organizations, such as the Broward Partners for Racial Equity, the Nonprofit Alliance, Children's Services Council, United Way, Broward College, Urban League, Broward County Human Services, to name but a few. Today, I wish to remedy that by paying tribute to their work and the ground that they have gained in this battle that is so many 100 years old. I'm assuming that all the commissioners have attended the two-day workshop of undoing racism, and that you winced as I did, as the Band-Aid was ripped off to expose the systemic and institutional racism, as well as the implicit biases that still plague us today. We all know that this is not something that will go away overnight, but rather will take diligent, focused, and surgical precision of peeling away the prejudices and bigotries that remain because they have been allowed to. COVID has only exacerbated the issues. Statistics show that the largest number of people being evicted today are Black women. We here are working hard to build bridges from the past to a better, more equitable future. But in our building, we must be mindful of and accountable to those who will be crossing this bridge. So today I repeat my support of the establishment of this task force. I feel strongly that we would benefit from having an overarching body that will fall under the purview of and be accountable to the Board of County Commissioners so as to strengthen the visibility, efficacy, and success of the mammoth task that's ahead of us. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. AT&T operator, next speaker.
Michael Morris, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Michael Morris. I'm an organizer for New Florida Majority. I just want to first state, in regards to the first speaker, we were all Africans before we became anything else. I just want to get that out of the way. So I'm calling in support of item 73, the creating of the Racial Equity Task Force in Broward. As we know, Broward was originally named after racist segregationist Napoleon B. Broward, whose statue was removed from the courthouse only 3 years ago. That started a long healing process in Broward County, but being that we are a majority ethnic county, it is important now more than ever to make sure that we enact policies that provide racial equity for those who have been disenfranchised over the many years. Whether it's addressing discrimination over housing, over policing our communities, we have to ask, what is the commission willing to ensure that concerns of Black and brown residents are being addressed? The creation of this racial equity task force would mean that the county has realized that many residents have been ignored, and in some way are now willing to commit to start righting the many wrongs in this county. Once again, I'm in full support of item 73 and look forward to continuing to work with the county to address this racial inequity in all forms. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. AT&T operator, next speaker, please.
Rashawn Banks, your line is now unmuted. Go ahead.
Good morning. I am in full support of the Racial Equity Task Force. I've been practicing law in Broward County 20 years, and we are 42% of us has a non-English language as our first language. 35% of us are white, 28% of us are African American, and 24% of us are Hispanic. We are extremely diverse. So you're talking about creating a task force that will establish accountability measures and provide progress reports after they have identified the inequities, they've done the research, they've made recommendations, they are trying to dismantle the racial inequities. I think this makes us all better. It decreases our racial divide. We don't need this type of divide with these racial stats. We already have one city, Fort Lauderdale, who has a racial equity agenda, which we can use as a model, which we can follow. So I think the county not enacting this task force, shame on us. So this is Rashawn Banks, and I fully support the Racial Equity Task Force. Thank you.
AT&T operator, next speaker, please. AT&T operator, next speaker, please.
Shashawi Jarrett, your line is now unmuted.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Shakiwa Jarrett, and I am the founder and president of the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'm speaking to support the Racial Equity Task Force without diluting its focus as it was initially put forth to the Commission. The very reason that this chamber exists is because of the glaring inequities in multiple systems in our society. I watched the meeting you all had earlier this year where two dedicated women presented and described in detail to this commission the pervasive racism in employment, criminal justice, community development, housing, etc., and they laid out the cost. As Commissioner Furr asked about training to combat this inequity, the women from the Brownwater training explained more would have to be done than just providing training. In fact, the woman mentioned the way forward was to dig into what was happening locally and fashion solutions to create and correct the inequities. While we appreciate the effort to address social inequities, it is important to acknowledge the need for a comprehensive approach, which is what this Racial Equity Committee or Task Force will begin to do. The intent is to bring together a diverse group of people and disciplines to address issues that we as a society keep ignoring, even with the empirical evidence staring us in our face. I'll mention a Business Wire article that was written recently and breaks down the cost of racism in America in housing, education, banking, entrepreneurship, which is always overlooked. It summed up a report by Citigroup talking about closing the racial equity gap 20 years ago might have provided an additional $16 trillion available in our economy. Facilitating increases to access to higher education for Black students might have bolstered lifetime incomes with an aggregate sum of $90 to $113 billion.
Ma'am, you need to begin to wrap up.
Lending to Black entrepreneurs might have resulted in the creation of an additional $13 trillion in business revenue over the last 20 years, creating 6.1 million jobs. The point is, we have to get our community together to look at the issues, study it, report on it, and then act. Do something about it so that we create a more inclusive and stronger community here in Broward County. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. AT&T operator, next speaker.
We have no further speakers on this item.
Okay, let me verify that there are no, can you check that, Commissioner Holness?
Yes, let me call some names out. Alvina Duran, Anthea Pennant, Bernadette Norris, Dr. Thelma Tenney, James Graham, Jasmine Shirley, and Rod.
Okay,
And Hawkeye,
AT&T operator, can you verify that there are no additional speakers on either item 60 or item number 73?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Before I proceed to Commissioner Holness, let me make a brief announcement. Earlier, I had called for speakers on item 42 and 61. We were told that there were no speakers on the line. Apparently, they have both contacted county administration that there are speakers on 42 and 61. So at the conclusion of this item that we're on, item 60, I will go back to item 42 and 61, unless we have to break for lunch, in which case I will take you up after that. Commissioner Holness, you're recognized to speak on item 60.
I'm sorry, we do have an interruption.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. AT&T operator.
We did have one that came in. I'm sorry.
We did have one that came in on which item number, sir? On 60?
Yes, on 60.
Okay, please. I have not yet closed the public hearing, so please recognize them.
Mayor, how many calls do we have left?
This will be the last one before I close the public hearing.
Good morning, Mayor Geller and County Commissioners. My name is Haki Halisi. I proudly serve as the Area Development Director for UNCF, United Negro College Fund. We've been serving Broward County for the past 20 years, and I wanted to just briefly lend my support to the Racial Equity Task Force proposed by Commissioner Dale Holness. Just briefly, during the past 50 years, the U.S. has seen racial and ethnic disparities in higher education enrollment and attainment, as well as gaps in earnings, employment, and other related outcomes for communities of color. While the share of the population with a high school diploma has risen over the past few years, the gap between minority attainment in higher education versus those of the majority continues to increase. I won't bore you with more details about just these various disparities, but we continue to fight for higher education equity at UNCF, and we think Mayor Holness's Racial Equity Task Force is a step in the right direction towards helping minority communities in Broward County. And I believe this is something that's long overdue, and I'd like to lend my support. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. AT&T operator, please verify there are no additional speakers.
We have no additional speakers at this time.
Okay, please show the public hearing on item number 60 closed. Commissioner Holness, you're recognized to speak on your item, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Let me just also add to your statement earlier, and I'll remove this, that there are times, it seems, not just now when their call is still on the line, as you noted on the earlier items. I don't know that we can't find a better system for the AT&T operator to identify those folks who are on. It happened previously when I was sitting there. People called me afterwards and says I was online and I didn't get to speak. Last meeting, we had a similar situation where people called me afterwards and said they were online on items and weren't able to speak.
Commissioner, we can discuss this at a future time.
So I just want us to pay attention.
Close the public hearing on this item now. Proceed.
This is an item.
Sir, 1 second. Is this a privileged motion, Commissioner Furr? In that case, Commissioner Holness, please continue.
This is an issue that unfortunately makes us uncomfortable. We don't like to talk about race and equality. So we pretend oftentimes it doesn't exist. And we don't address it. And as a result, we get stuck where we are. Mention was made of the city study that showed that if we were to erase these inequalities, we could grow our economy over the next 5 years by $5 trillion. It means that every one of us would benefit, whether you're black, white, or of any ethnic background, would not matter. Because if we're growing prosperity in our country, all of us would benefit from that. We started with slavery. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database suggests that 12.5 million Africans were shipped to the New World. 10,700,000 survived the dreaded Middle Passage, disembarking in North America and the Caribbean. And part of that history is this, that the same slaveholders here held slave in Latin America and in the Caribbean. And oftentimes, slaves would be moved from one country to the next as that slaveholder decided that they needed to move them. Or if they didn't act according to what the slave master wanted them to, how they wanted them to act, they'd move them to break them up, break up families. The ships that brought my ancestors to the Caribbean is the same ships that brought them here to North America. In fact, there could be kins of mine, maybe a great-great-grandfather's brother who was shipped here while he was dropped off in the Caribbean. So we share a common history there. There's also noted from this database that a large number of those people who were enslaved died even before they got on the ship. When I went to Ghana, I saw the dungeons, the misery pits that folks were held in. In a space, maybe 1/5 of this, 300-400 people were held together, eating and held there for months or more until the ships came. Eating where to defecate, not being allowed outside. Some end up blind because of lack of sunlight. Slavery was abolished, and some gains were made by the freed people during the Reconstruction period. But there was a backlash. Then entered Jim Crow. And the brutality that many black people faced was just cruel. When they stepped out of line, they were lynched or some way otherwise brutalized. In fact, there's documented cases of 3,446 lynching between 1882 and 1968, and I'm working on a project right here in Broward County. Reuben Stacy, who was lynched right here in Broward, 1935. When communities of black folks got wealthy, as in what happened in Black Wall Street, they were burnt out. Their homes and land and businesses destroyed. Okiee here in Florida was another example, and there are many examples of that existed. Jim Crow continued. We still see an issue with blacks being discriminated against today. We saw what happened to George Floyd and so many others. We still see an effort, even in this past election, to disenfranchise blacks from being able to cast a vote. Simple as that. So we have serious issues that we, as a progressive county, Broward County, can and should address. We should lead, as we have done in so many other issues. And I know we really don't want to talk about it because it makes us uncomfortable. But we must find a solution to move forward together. I don't bring this item to make anyone feel bad. I bring it to move our community forward because I think we can. The Brookings Institute, that famous nonprofit public policy organization based in Washington, D.C., did some in-depth research, and some of these facts, I'll present a few. 1 in 2 black adults with a college degree or more had a family member in jail or prison. 1 in 3 black men born in 2001 will spend time in prison in their lifetime. This is on the criminal justice side. 1 in 1,000 black men and boys will die at the hands of police. On the economic side, 1 in 3 black families have 0 or negative wealth. 1 in 3 black children live in poverty. 1 in 5 black borrowers are turned down for a conventional loan. 1 in 8 black adults were not able to pay for a $400 emergency expense in the past 3 months. 1 in 10 black adults were not able to pay rent or mortgage in the past 3 months. 1 in 2.5 black adults were unemployed or temporarily furloughed in April of this year, 2020. 1 in 6 black adults have lost their jobs or income in the past 3 months. On the health side, 1 in 6.5 black children have higher blood lead levels than others. 1 in 7 black children suffer from asthma. 1 in 9 black Americans aged 0 to 65 are uninsured. 1 in 13 black adults were not able to see a doctor or go to the hospital in the past 3 months because they could not afford it. 1 in 9 black children will enter foster care at some point before they turn 18. And the statistics and the list goes on. I won't go through every single one. So we're at a point where I believe after 400 plus years of not acknowledging or working towards a solution, we can now in a real earnest manner. And Broward County could lead the nation and the world. I want to thank all those who spoke and apologize to them for us not being able to get to them at the last meeting. And thank the organizations that have been leading the way, Children's Service Council, and you heard many mentioned earlier. There is, in my mind, a groundswell within our community to deal with this issue. You know, I know one of my colleagues has an item to sunset this in 5 years. None of our other boards have a fixed sunset date, none, except the 2 that deals with this issue. No other one has any preset sunset. We cannot fix in 5 years these issues. It'd really be a shame if we were to vote for that to occur. It'd be very wrong. Wouldn't look good at all. You've heard from the Broward workshop. Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce is on board. The Broward Alliance is on board. Many major institutions, as well as many people in the community, are on board to ensure that we move our community forward, that we work to create a place that affords opportunity for everyone to live to their fullest potential. And if we do that, the level of prosperity that we'll see in Broward County would amaze each and every one of us, because that's what it will do. In empowering those who have been left out, and locked up, we can create wealth. We can create prosperity. We can create greater harmony. And this will be a better place for all of us. I've brought an amendment because part of what I'm hearing from the communities, they want to be a part of the implementation of this, not just sit on a board and advise. And some are already doing work. So that is an amendment that I brought forward to help with implement the plan developed by this task force. And I'd like for us to add that as an amendment to what I've presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Holness, and I think your words about this being a uncomfortable subject, but one that needs to be confronted, are well taken. Members, at this point, we must do an amendment to this document because to clarify it. As you are aware, the county attorney had prepared an amendment to clarify that this item is advisory to the county commission, as it says in page 2, line 15, and which says will serve an advisory capacity, and page 6, line 2 and 3. The sponsor of the bill, excuse me, I keep legislating, I'm sorry. The sponsor of the ordinance has proposed an amendment. So county attorney originally had an amendment to clarify that. The sponsor of the ordinance has an amendment that would say that it's not just a advisory board, and one of the two amendments must be adopted for clarification, because right now it's not clear what the powers are. And when the county attorney offered what he thought was just clarifying language, he was told by the sponsor of the ordinance that it's not. So one way or another, whether it's strictly advisory or whether it has additional powers, one way or another, we should adopt an amendment to clarify what the powers are. I will call on the county attorney to clarify my discussion, because mine wasn't. County attorney, could you clarify?
I think you were very clear, Mayor, actually, but I think when the draft was printed onto the agenda, it was not clear to us that, and we're dealing specifically with page 6, under section 1-120, which is the functions, powers, and duties of the task force. There's an introductory clause that says the powers, functions, and duties of the task force are to serve in an advisory capacity to the commission on the following matters. And some wording was inserted into C. It goes A through E. There are 5 powers and functions. C had some language that we thought was unclear and arguably made this something beyond purely advisory. So we had presented what we thought was a technical amendment, but in speaking with Commissioner Holness, I think it's his intention as represented, or I should say reflected in the amendment he's now filed, for the board to have also sort of a substantive, not purely advisory power. For that reason, even though we still think this would be interpreted, the actual draft that's printed, as being purely advisory, it would make sense to clarify it one way or the other, either through adoption of the amendment or by modifying the language that's in the print.
And Commissioner and County Attorney, my understanding is if there is the desire to keep it strictly advisory, that you have an amendment that would do that. Is that correct?
Yes, they're very simple to.
And if there is the desire to do additional things, you also have the amendment that Commissioner Holness would do. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Holness, would you like to explain your amendment, sir?
Yes. So the language in the original, actually in C, on page 6 says develop and assistance with implementation. That was already in the original. The county attorney brought something else to the table, and I thought you sent a letter withdrawing that.
It is withdrawn, right. I'm just saying that I think that it's unclear right now what, and you have an amendment, so I'm asking you to explain your amendment, sir.
So this amendment makes it clear that, and it's it reads, implement the plan developed by the task force to help dismantle identified systemic racism and create greater racial equity in Broward County. That clarifies that it's not just about meeting. I mean, Children's Service Board is already working on things. Broward Health is already working. So they're already working towards some implementation. To not have that inclusive in this would really not do what needs to be done.
County Attorney, just to clarify so that everybody understands, it is my understanding of this is that if the language is not adopted in and the clarifying amendment that you have, that it would limit the board to strictly advising the county commission, while Commissioner Holness would also have this assist in the implementation of the I guess, findings. Is that correct?
It is, but I'd like to explain it for 1 second if I can.
Please, and I'm asking the members to please pay close attention to, because this is very technical here. County Attorney.
So Power C in the draft, and this is the printed version that went with the ordinance, so this is directly from Commissioner Holness. It says that one of the powers is, and I'm going to mention the introductory clause in a minute, it says development, comma, and assistance with implementation, comma, of a plan containing detailed steps essentially to dismantle systemic racism. However, the reason why we had proposed a technical amendment was we can't read C in isolation. We have to read it in the context of the introductory clause. And the introductory clause says the functions, powers, and duties of the task force are to serve in an advisory capacity to the county commission on the following matters. So everything in A through E is qualified by the introductory clause that it's only in an advisory capacity. Because we thought that there was potential for confusion, given the words and assistance with implementation, we had proposed what we thought was a clarifying technical amendment that in further discussions with Commissioner Holness, we withdrew because we understood that we weren't just being technical, it was actually substantive. So at this point, Commissioner Holness, I think, is trying to clarify what his original intent was, even though we think that we didn't accurately capture that in the draft that was before you. And what we've done is we've come up with, the board, I'm not saying the board is a binary choice, but certainly a binary choice is most directly presented. You have Commissioner Holness's amendment, or you're going to stick with the notion that this is purely advisory. If it is purely advisory, and that's the board's will, we would recommend a very simple amendment just to avoid confusion on that point.
And the other choice, and Commissioner Furr, I will get you as soon as the county attorney answers my question. So again, I want the members to understand. So binary choice 1 is clarify that this is strictly advisory. What is binary choice 2, which is the which would be accomplished by Commissioner Holness' amendment?
Well, so his Commissioner Holness's amendment is very clear. It's on item 60, additional material, and what Commissioner Holness did, which we of course drafted, and we think the language states it clearly, is it breaks up the powers, functions, and duties of the task force into 2 subparts. Subpart A is the advisory capacity performance, and then it takes out and creates a part B. B is not qualified by it being in an advisory capacity, and it expressly says, and just reading it with the intro clause, the powers of the task force are to, and one of them is implement the plan developed by the task force to help dismantle identified systemic racism and create greater racial equity in Broward County.
What powers or limits are there granted under Part B?
It says implement the plan, so I think anything that's reasonably and necessarily incidental to implementing the plan is something that you could say that that's accurate in the abstract. Now, if the task force came to us and we would be staffing it and it wanted to do something that we thought, was improper, then obviously we would say something on that. But there were no express qualifications or limitations.
Do all of the members understand the binary choice in front of us? Okay, Commissioner Furr, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say I'm very much in support of this. I think it is something that is, as being on the Children's Services Council, I've watched for the last 5 years the progress that's been made with this. And it is nothing short of astounding in terms of the way it changes the way people look at things. It does require some very delicate work because of the exposure to people's emotions, the things it brings up, and I think it has to be done very carefully. And that is why I want us to be cautious in giving too much power to a board to implement. And I think there's a middle ground. And my suggestion is that instead of the board implementing the plan, identify potential organizations to help in the implementation that can then be screened. Because I think you got a 35-member board, and you don't want that board doing the implementation could be unwieldy, and there's only a couple on that board that to this date had the experience that I feel comfortable with, that have gone through the training, have gone through the workshop, who've gone through that. I think what the board is capable of doing, though, is identifying those organizations that could help in the implementation. I think that's a slight change in the wording, but it gets us to where I think you're trying to get to. It doesn't mean that the board's implementing, but they're identifying those that could. And I think there's a slight nuance there that I think could help.
Commissioner Owens, before we enter debate on this, because I learned something last week, Commissioner Furr has raised concerns about the wording of the Holness Amendment right now. So let me first ask if there is a second to the Holness Amendment before we spend 2 hours in debate.
I'll second it for debate.
Okay, so there is it now. That's what I learned last week,
right.
Which is before you spend a lot of time debating, find out if there's a second. So, Commissioner Holness, you wanted to comment, but then I am going to open it up to others. Commissioner Holness, you recognize, sir.
Let me respond if I may, and thank you, Commissioner Furr. The idea is this, that the groups already doing things, we should encourage them to continue doing these things. The workshop is now formulating something. They weren't there before, but they're now on board. Mm-hmm. They actually have a greater ability to really implement this than we do. When you look across the span and the bandwidth of their organization members and what they bring to the table, the billions of dollars that they spend, the hundreds of thousands of employees that they have, if they are implementing these things within their organization, it gets us there much quicker, and it's much seamless, and I think very helpful. That is the intent that I have here. The intent is not that they're going to come and tell us what to do, how to implement. The intent is that they are working on the implementation as we go forward also.
I really am not going to want cross debate here. Commissioner Furr, I will call on you to respond, okay. And that's it then. Commissioner Furr.
That's fine. And that is to my point. What you're saying is the Broward Workshop could then be doing the implementation. So rather than saying that this board is doing the implementation, say that they will identify those organizations that can do the implementation. That puts it at arm's length a little bit. I don't think we want to be having all of our advisory boards doing implementation.
Commissioner Holness,
I'm trying to fix the language, sir. Okay. We need to get this done.
But what I'm saying is this board could identify the Broward Workshop, the school board, Children's Services Council, United Way, Community Foundation. They can identify those that we all can feel comfortable with. We have to feel comfortable that the ones that are going to be doing the implementation can do this in the right way, and in a careful way, and a way that we can that'll move us forward. And I think by just giving them the opportunity and the power to identify those gets us to that place.
Okay. Well, I will briefly comment here, since I haven't said anything on this, is I join Commissioner Furr for a different reason. I'm not comfortable with giving a board unspecified powers, a group of 35. I've asked the county attorney what this does, giving a group the ability to, I don't recall the exact wording of the county attorney, but to help enact or enforce or whatever the wording is, a group of 35 people without limiting or specifying what those powers are. I'm not comfortable with either, but I think that Commissioner Furr's comments were well taken on having this group to help identify them, because these are groups that can enact this.
All right.
Okay, let me first call on Commissioner Ryan, and
then I have language.
I understand, sir. I just need to let other commissioners speak. Commissioner Ryan.
I'd like to speak too, Mr.
Senator Rich, I will
Mayor.
get you. Commissioner Ryan, Commissioner Bogan, Senator Rich, and then back for an amendment to Commissioner Holness. Unless, do you want to hear the proposed amended language first before you speak, Commissioner Ryan? Commissioner Bogan?
I see that Commissioner Bogan has been handed something handwritten.
Commissioner Holness.
Commissioner Holness has been.
I confuse them all the time.
That he may wish to support. So if you want to read that into the record, I'll then speak.
With the approval, because I need to call on people in order, with the approval of Commissioner Ryan, Commissioner Holness, you're recognized for proposed amendment.
So the county attorney brought me something that I guess could help get us there. It's development of an identification of individuals or entities to implement. That would be a just of the plan that we developed. So,
County Attorney, can you elaborate on what the effect of the language? Because again, without reading it in paramateria, it's difficult. Without reading the whole thing, it's difficult to understand. So, County Attorney, can you elaborate on what the amended language would do?
Of course, and this is building upon what Commissioner Furr mentioned and Commissioner Holness expressed that he would consider. So remember, this is still all qualified by the task force serves in an advisory capacity to the county commission on the following matters. So C would now read, again, advisory capacity, development of, comma, and identification of individuals or entities to implement, comma, a plan containing detailed concrete steps and the rest of it.
Okay, that appears to be an amendment offered by Commissioner Furr. Commissioner Holness, do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
it's not exactly what I want, but to move the debate and to move the item forward, I'll live with it.
Okay, please show the friendly amendment by Commissioner Furr adopted. Commissioner Ryan, did you still wish to speak?
Could you please reread the amendment one more time?
Okay, excuse me one second. Senator Rich, is it okay if I have him read it when it gets to you, right before you?
Sure.
Thank you. Sure. Commissioner Ryan, you're recognized, sir.
I'm supportive of it as read in the most recent draft of the amendment that was provided by the county attorney. I do have some questions with regard to membership, and as us, my colleagues know, there's an amendment that I have on the sunset period that's separate, but I have some a couple of questions and an amendment with regard to membership, and just wanted to know through the chair, when would I be recognized?
You're recognized, sir, for discussion and for proposed amendment.
All right, so this actually is not germane to the Holness amendment.
We've already adopted that amendment, so we're now open for an additional amendment.
All right, so I wanted to add, we have 35 members now, and I wanted to add, which would be a subsection 22 on the membership, and it would say that we would include, so instead of it being 35 members, it would be 36 members. we would include a member nominated by the Gay and Lesbian Community Center of Greater Fort Lauderdale, and better known as the Pride Center at
Equality Park.
Equality Park. And this would make it consistent with the membership that we had included with the Police Review Board. So I think that, you know, as we talk about racial equity and equality, it is particularly difficult for persons of color in the LGBT community and specifically transgender persons. So I think that this would be an important component and voice that we would have on the membership, and ask that the amendment be adopted.
Is there a second to the amendment? Does everybody understand the amendment? Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second it for discussion.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Let me just,
Commissioner Holness, you recognize,
let me
sir.
say this.
I'll call on Representative Ryan to close.
So,
okay.
I didn't want to add another one, but since one's been added, let me bring the one that I would have added. And that would be Women of Color Empowerment Institute. They actually reached out, and I says, you know, I didn't want to add an additional one, but at this point in time, since we're adding another one, I want to add Women of Color Empowerment Institute as an additional member.
Okay. Commissioner Holness, is that a amendment to the amendment?
That's
or is
an
that a
amendment to the,
substitute
that's an
amendment?
amendment to the amendment to add, in addition to the category that Commissioner Ryan suggests, that we add Women of Color Empowerment Institute.
To be clear, the current task force, I believe, is 34 members. And we are now adding, under Commissioner Ryan's amendment, one additional member from the gay and lesbian community, and then additionally, as an amendment to Commissioner Ryan's amendment, the group that Commissioner Holness suggested.
It's actually 35, and then it moves it up to 37.
I wasn't really suggesting it was 130. Okay, so is there a second to Commissioner Holness's amendment to the amendment?
I'll second it.
Okay, that's seconded. All right. Is there any debate on the amendment to the amendment, which is by Commissioner Holness? Is there any debate? Is there any objection to the amendment to the amendment? If not, show the amendment amended. We are now on Commissioner Ryan's amendment as amended by Commissioner Holness's amendment. Is there any discussion on Commissioner Ryan's amendment? Is there any discussion? Is there any debate on Commissioner Ryan's amendment? If not, all those in favor of Commissioner Ryan's amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Show Commissioner Ryan's amendment as amended by Commissioner Holness's amendment adopted. Commissioner Ryan, are you recognized for further debate?
Yeah, I just had an inquiry to the sponsor of the ordinance. With regard to the membership that begins, the task force membership begins on page 3. It speaks to 35 members, which we've now increased to 37 members, with each county commissioner nominating one member. So that would be the first 9. And then you would have an additional 26 members. My inquiry is at the bottom of page 4, subsection C, which speaks to the nomination of the task force members that are referenced in subsection 17 through 21. It's a total of 10 members. And rather than have that nominated by each county commissioner, the statement says, reading on lines 20 and 21 and 22, it says the members for the categories identified in subsection 17 through 21 may be nominated by any county commissioner. that way I read it means that one county commissioner could make the nomination for all 10 of these members. Is that what your understanding is to
No.
the sponsor, Commissioner Holness?
No. The idea was these are suggested categories. And in fact, the language reads, Broward College would actually have a seat because they are an institution of higher learning with the largest number of students in Broward County. So they would already be in there. It's suggestion that we should consider these entities to be ones that we look at in order to broaden this out to be more inclusive.
Okay, Commissioner
of these
Ryan,
institutions.
I apologize,
so
but
just for
Commissioner, wait,
clarification, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Ryan, just to, if there is some uncertainty there, without objection, I will ask the county attorney to clarify what Commissioner Holness just said. Would that meet your needs, Commissioner Ryan?
It would, being the intention that, you rotate through the commissioners making the nominations for items 17 through 21. We wouldn't want one member to make the nominations for all 10 of those positions. I think that's to the detriment of the input and recommendations of the other members.
I believe it is the intent here, and the way I read it, that each commissioner would appoint only one, but I will ask without objection, I see no objection, to the county attorney to clarify that each commissioner will have one amendment, one appointee, and those are the recommended categories. Commissioner Ryan, are you completed? Are you done, sir?
I am, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that on page 3, each county commissioner already is granted one appointment.
And I think that these were the
Are separate
appointments.
from the 10 appointments that are referenced on the following page.
Okay,
So
I'll
now
call-
you would really have, each county commissioner would be making 2 appointments, because you'd make one appointment, which is kind of an at-large appointment that's referenced on page 3, the top of page 3, and then these categories in items 17 through 21, those 10 persons that would be part of the task force, each of the 9 members would have one nomination, and then, whoever got the odd, the 10th one is not a concern to me. I just didn't want one member to come in and provide a list for, nominations for those 10 positions.
County attorney, can you clarify, based on the wording here, whether each county commissioner has one at large and one categorical, or only one and that one must be a categorical? Commissioner Ryan, does that accurately reflect your question?
Absolutely, yes, it does.
So you understand the difference between an at-large and a categorical. Can you respond as to what the wording of this would accomplish?
Yes.
Well, will you do so?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Each county commissioner has an at-large nomination. That's in the introductory clause. This is on page 3, lines 4 through 6.
Okay.
However, additionally, as Commissioner Ryan noted, when you turn to page 4, lines 4 through 18, it lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different categories, but one of the categories has 6 members. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's 10 appointments that are categorical. And for those 10 appointments, the way this is written, as Commissioner Ryan noted, it says, and this is on lines 20 through 22, which he identified, the members for the categories identified in B17 through B21, those are those 10 categorical positions, may be nominated by any county commissioner. Again, not appointed, so theoretically, any commissioner who wanted to could propose nominations for all 10 of those, plus the one at large, the way that this is currently written.
So what would be clarified was each county commissioner would have one at large, and in addition could nominate, which I believe is the same as appointing, one categorical. Is that correct?
Well, nominating still has to come to the board for appointment.
When you say the board of county commissioners.
The board of, I apologize, I used it loosely. The task force is this other group that the county commission may be forming today, but you would still, every one of these nominations, all 35 members would have to, or 37 members with the amendment.
42.
Would have to come before the Board of County Commissioners for appointment. So we're only dealing here with which individual or entity proffers the nominee.
I see.
Let me get-
Okay, so,
Can you deal with that very issue?
let me finish. So the county attorney's clarification is that the current wording is that each county commissioner has one at-large, and in addition, each county commissioner may nominate one and only one categorical, but is not required to do so.
Mayor, that's not how it reads on the second part. The
Okay.
second part right now, it's not narrowed.
Right, no, I said as amended because we had already discussed that Commissioner Ryan's statement that one county commissioner could nominate 10. We've already authorized you to make that technical correction.
If that's, I just want to make sure it is indeed a technical correction. It's easy to draft.
I believe everybody said that that you cannot have one commissioner do all 10. So is that clear? That's the current language. Now, Commissioner Holness, you recognize, sir. Commissioner Bogan, I promise I'll get to you, but this is just on this particular issue raised by Commissioner Ryan.
So on the 6 residents who are engaged in racial equity work in one of the county's system of care for child welfare housing, what I'd really like to see happen is that comes from out of our human services department, because they're engaged in that work directly. That is what I was hoping for. So I guess we probably need to amend the language to make that clear, that it would come from there. And I don't know if that's an issue for us to be able to do, to have that human services department actually proffer those names for us, rather than us, because we won't be as engaged as they are in dealing with that issue.
Okay, Commissioner Ryan, and by the way,
And not to get too far
Commissioner
into-
Bogan, again, I promise that I will get to you as soon as we've resolved this one issue.
Yeah, and not to get too far into
Commissioner
the
Ryan.
weeds, but because we have 10 here and we have 9 members, can we just change that from 6 to 5 residents engaged in racial equity work? That way, each of the members can get one appointment. If we have 10,
But
then we got an odd
Commissioner
number
Ryan,
with
what
9 members.
Commissioner Holness is saying is, under Commissioner Holness's comment now, each commissioner would not get those categorical appointments because he would want, was that 5 of them?
6 at 6.
He would want 6 of the 10 to go to.
Come to our human services
the human
department.
services instead. So the question in front of the commission now is, would you want each commissioner to be able to appoint one of those categoricals, or would we like the human service board to appoint 6 and the county to appoint the remaining 4? Is that, have I correctly stated that, County Attorney?
And this was at their request, that these categories be included, because they wanted to make sure that these folks who were actually experiencing and living this would be a part of it. And again, they are very engaged with this work. And for us to not allow them to have that input, I don't think will do us justice.
There's not a problem there, but Mayor, just to make sure, because you said appoint, and I think you meant nominate. So they're all
Nominate, that's
nominations.
correct.
Yep.
So the question now in front of us is to clarify whether the Human Services Board would nominate 6, and then the county commissioners could nominate the remaining 4 amongst us, or whether you would want the county commission to nominate, for example, 9 and the Human Services Board to nominate 1. I believe that that's a fair statement of what we're debating. Commissioner Ryan, do you have a position on this?
Supported as just as you just referenced it.
So you favor remaining each commissioner to have 1. Commissioner Holness, you believe that instead of that, the Human Services Board should appoint 6. Is that correct?
And also, if I may, 19, that is intended for Broward College. We should probably just spell it out that it's Broward College. They're engaged in the work already. And I mean, the
Okay,
language
that's
written
on it.
so that it would identify them, but we can make it specific, and that probably is a better thing. They ask that we do that also, so that's something that I.
But that does not affect the issue we're discussing right now on the 10.
It does, because that's one of the 10 that's.
That is one of the 10?
Yes.
Okay, so Commissioner Ryan, are you okay with that one?
I am.
That leaves 9. and there's 9 commissioners, which works better. So,
It actually leaves, because if we add the 6 that I'm talking about from Human Services.
right, but Commissioner Ryan has not accepted that. So,
Yeah, I would like the members to be able to make those appointments rather than.
Can we make it
have
that
the
it's
racial
recommended by them?
Yeah, as recommended, that's fine.
So let's make it as recommended by them.
hold on, I just want to make sure that there's clarity here. So Commissioner Ryan, what Commissioner Holness has suggested, and I believe that you said that you're okay with, is there would be, of the remaining 9, 6 of them would be recommended by the Human Services Board and
nominated by a county commission.
Well, I mean, if they're recommended by the Human Services Board, I don't even see why they have to be nominated by a county commissioner.
So you're taking away our one appointee, is that what you're saying?
No, you're taking away a second. Each county commissioner would have 1 at large.
Oh, okay.
We were discussing now a second one categorical. And, I would suggest if the Human Services Board are going to come up with 6, there's no point in having them nominated by a commissioner. I would recommend that the Human Services Board simply nominate the 6. And then county commissioners may recommend for the remaining 3 seats at large. Is that correct?
That would be acceptable.
Okay.
But you would want to find somehow some technical language to say that you rotate, the selections of the other members. I just didn't want.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Ryan, it's common for commissioners to nominate 5 people to 3 seats on boards, and then we have to take it up from there. No, stop.
Well, I just want to clarify that the Chamber
Commissioner
of
Holness,
Commerce.
let me call on the county attorney first. County attorney.
Sir, thank you, Mayor. So first of all, there's still, the one with Broward College doesn't go away because it's still only a nomination, so it's appointed, it's
selected by them.
It's still, well, it's nominated by a county commissioner, but it would say 1 member representing Broward College.
Right.
So if, I just want to make sure I understand this, if Commissioner Holness's amendment is acceptable, which is number 20, which are the 6 members representing systems for healthcare, et cetera, if they're going to be nominated by recommended, I think
it should be nominated because there's no point in having them recommend to the county commission to nominate.
So if they're nominated by the Human Services Department director or nominee, then that only leaves 1, 2, 3, 4 on the outside. So why don't we, 4 left because the 6 are dealt with, why don't we just add a sentence that says, no member of the county commission may nominate more than 1 of the remaining 4, and we can link it to those.
Okay. Is it 4 or 3? Because I thought one of those was to Broward College.
It's 4. It's 1 member representing Broward College, which individual is engaged in X or Y, nominated by a county commissioner.
I would suggest that also just be
Just nominated by
Broward College. I mean, I would, when we set up the cannabis task force, my choice was a nominee representing the sheriff. I just had to go with whoever the sheriff recommended, so there's no point in having that at all.
So that leaves 3.
Okay,
And if I may, on the 3
so now,
remaining,
Commissioner Holness.
On the 3 remaining, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber in Broward County, for that chamber slot, I think would be appropriate. They have reached out to me for that, and we didn't specify them in it. So that would, I think, be an appropriate thing for us to do since they are actually the largest chamber in Broward County. And they've already begun some work on this issue also.
I just want to check with the members who represent areas other than Fort Lauderdale, if they're okay, if everyone is okay with that, Commissioner Fisher.
Mayor,
again, we're talking only on these categoricals now, because as soon as we leave this, I'm going back to Commissioner Bogan. So Commissioner Fisher, this is on the categoricals?
Yeah, Mayor, I was just trying to, I had brought that information forward as an additional item when we first started talking about this, but I thought item 14 clarified that, nominated by the Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce.
I'm sorry, 14?
on line 24, page 3.
14 is United Way.
United Way.
I'm looking at the, right here. I'm looking at item 14. All right,
I thought I had them in, but
I thought it's already has it in there. Because we added them once the material went out. I think Commissioner Holness added them in.
I don't see them.
I can't explain that, maybe, do you know?
It's on Exhibit 1 that
Yes.
we're going off of, I believe.
Make them 38.
The substitute ordinance from Commissioner Holness.
Is that you?
We'll have meetings of this group in the convention center. Let's make it, okay. So do you want to make the Fort Lauderdale?
They're on there.
Where?
That's what I said. They're line 24, page 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Holness, was it your intent to include the Fort
yes.
Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce?
Yes.
Is there an amendment to include them as the 38th member?
I have a
Okay.
discussion related to the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
So if that's going to make it easier, yes, let's
Okay.
add them as a 38.
Okay, Dr.
So that
Dr.
someone
Sharif.
else can get one from
Okay,
somewhere
this
else.
is only right now on the categoricals. Dr. Sharif, you're recognized, ma'am.
So this board is becoming very Fort Lauderdale heavy. There's other parts of Broward County, and there's other chambers of commerce. So the Miramar Pembroke Pines Chamber of Commerce is very, very large. They also incorporate the West Park and Pembroke Park area.
And Hollywood.
So, in Hollywood, right. So how you just gonna put one chamber of commerce and say that's the biggest when it's not?
So-
it
wait,
has to
Commissioner
be
Holness,
a
let her finish.
balance. Why? For Jesus Christ. So can we do something, I guess, maybe have it where they get together maybe and choose their member instead of us just delegating this one chamber only?
Okay, Dr. Sharif, do you have any wording or any, right now, there's a motion by Commissioner Holness to add a additional member, which would be 38. That would be the Fort Lauderdale Chamber.
And it would still have a category for Chamber of Commerce.
I'm sorry?
It would still leave a category for a Chamber of Commerce.
Where?
Because I wouldn't be taking that out. It'd still be there.
Number 18 would still stay.
Where is the number for Chamber of Commerce?
So it's number...
Page 4, line
Mr. Mayor,
6 and 7.
Mr. Mayor.
A member representing the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, gotcha. Number 18.
Mayor.
So that would still be there, and then the additional one would be.
Stop. Please, one at a time, and right now it's me.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Senator Rich.
could I make a point? Could I just make one point, please?
Senator Rich, is this, we are currently debating the Chamber of Commerce question?
Yes, it is.
You're recognized on the Chamber of Commerce
Just
issue.
advised that
Then
there is
followed
a
by
Broward
Commissioner Bogan.
Council of there is a Broward Council of Chambers who appoints for the oversight board. So why don't we just have them make the appointment of who they want or who they decide on for this chamber? Because we cannot keep adding people. It's unworkable, unwieldy as it is right now.
Senator
So,
Rich.
I mean, it just would,
Yes.
that would be my suggestion for a,
Senator
chamber,
Rich.
for a chamber person.
My question is, right now on page 4, number 18, there's a Chamber of Commerce. Commissioner Holness was suggesting that in addition to that there be a representative of the Fort Lauderdale Chamber. So can you speak to that specifically?
She did.
Yes, I agree with I think that we have 9 appointees. Each one of us has an appointment, and we have a spot for a chamber. And I think that Commissioner Sharif is right. There are others. I mean, I just don't think that at this point we should be picking one. And it should be done by this Broward Council of Chambers. Let them pick let that organization pick the appointee.
Okay, Dr. Sharif, let me get back. I'm sorry, Commissioner Bogan. The question in front of us right now is, are we going to have one chamber chosen at large and the Fort Lauderdale Chamber, or are we just going to have one chamber? That is the effect.
I'd like.
Yes, Commissioner Bowman.
So nice to be able to talk. Why don't we just have one chamber? I don't understand two. If we have two, why don't we have three? We have three, why don't we have four? Why don't we have 31 of them for each city? So either we have one
fit them into this board.
either that's one that's picked by, Senator Rich's comment is perfect. She's right on. Or if we're going to have another one, I want the Coconut Creek Chamber, and then she wants her Pembroke Pines Chamber and Miramar Chamber and everyone else's chamber. So,
Okay, well, Commissioner Holness, do you withdraw your amendment, or do you want to vote on it?
Let's vote on it, because
Okay,
I think that the point that you can get an additional chamber from somewhere else is fine. But the one chamber that I know is the largest, and I'm not showing favoritism to Fort Lauderdale, but I know that their membership is huge. I know that they are a large institution that brings a lot of folks with them. And that's why I'm suggesting keep the category where we can select one from, and they can rotate if they want to.
Okay.
But then we have that one in place still.
Is there a
'Cause I know
motion?
they're already ahead on.
Is there a
on
motion to continue the meeting until the completion of this agenda item?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I do not believe, let me ask, I prefer to continue to 1 or 1:15 if I think we can finish the agenda. I do not believe we will be able to finish this agenda by 1 or 1:15 with the items remaining in front of us. So I think a motion to just continue until we continue this item is in order. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Okay, sure, that done without objection. I would suggest that all of you, because we're going to take a relatively brief break, ask your staff. We're not done yet, Dr. Sharif. Oh, okay. Okay, I would ask that those of you may want to consider asking I'll give her one. Asking your staffs to order you lunch. Josh, please ask to order my lunch. Okay. So, Commissioner Holness has moved to add an additional member to the task force, which is the Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce, in addition to the Chamber of Commerce listed, I believe it's number 18. All those in favor of Commissioner Holness's amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Show the amendment not adopted. We are now, I believe that resolves
that issue.
Does that resolve? I've lost.
I'll just make Commissioner Rich's motion that the member representing the Chamber of Commerce shall be selected by the Association of Chambers that they're all.
I'll second that.
It's called Broward Council of Chambers.
Okay.
Broward Council of
Commissioner, Senator Rich moves
Yes.
that an amendment, number 18, clarifying amendment, that member representing a Chamber of Commerce serving Broward County, instead of nominated by a county commissioner, will be nominated by the Council of Chambers or whatever it's
Council of
called.
Chambers.
Right,
Yeah,
Broward
that's
Council of
it.
Chambers.
And that's moved by Vice Mayor Udine. Is there any discussion? Is there any debate? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, show that adopted. Josh, you're doing that or have done that? Okay.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes.
can we ever come back to speak on the main?
No, because we are currently still on the categorical.
Okay.
County Attorney,
You got it?
are there any categoricals left to be appointed by county commissioners, or have they all been filled now?
No, I think there are a couple. I was just trying to do that math. Mayor Geller.
Yes.
So number 17 is still categorical, and then I'll just run through it for 1 second if I can, just to make sure I have it right. 17 is categorical, appointed by a county commissioner. 18 is categorical, but not by the county commission, that's the chambers. 19 is categorical, but it's going to be nominated by Broward College, right, by the president, I guess, of Broward College, or nominee. 20 is categorical, those are the 6 members, but not no longer nominated by the board, now nominated by the Human Services Department director or nominee. And then 21 is still categorical. So it looks like 17 and 21 remain categorical, nominated by the commission.
Okay. Does everybody understand that? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right.
Categories.
So, I think that we can now move on. Commissioner Bogan, we've resolved the issue of the categorical list. Do we need a motion for that? Or I think we've already done the separate motions?
I think it would be helpful just to have one motion.
I move it as explained by the county attorney.
Second. May I just ask, do you want
No.
the language?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Would
go
you
ahead.
like the language in there that because there are only 2 left, no member of the county
Yes.
commission may nominate more than one of the
Yes.
2 remaining?
Right.
Okay.
All right, moved by Commissioner Ryan, second by Commissioner Holness. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Show that adopted. What was Shakespeare's play, Much Ado About Nothing? Okay. Commissioner Bogan, I apologize for the long delay we had to resolve the categorical issue. You're recognized, sir, on the main motion, on the main ordinance.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the motion, of the item as it is as an advisory. Now, I was kind of confused. I just wanted to explain. I understand what Commissioner Holness wanted to do, and then I understand what Commissioner Furr's amendment. Can we just have that explained once again as to going from advisory to something else? What was there something that?
Yeah, sir, I'll ask County Attorney to explain that. My understanding, Commissioner Bogan, is it's still advisory, but it is going to work with several organizations to help on implementation. It will recommend organizations to help with implementation. County Attorney, can you clarify? You have the wording of the amendment that you drafted.
Can you play that out? Like, let's just say, for example, there's a wrong happening, whatever that wrong is happening, and this board meets and they said, no, we need to make changes. There should be some recommended changes. Tell me how that, let's say it's at the sheriff's office. There's something going on at the sheriff's office that people are upset about, just like that happened when I was mayor, the guy, that kid that was thrown down to the ground, something like that happens. What can this board do based on the change that both commissioners are looking to do?
That's been adopted. I believe they can recommend changes to the commission. County Attorney, please clarify.
Yes, ultimately, the board is advisory only to the county commission, but one of the advisory powers is to advise regarding, this is the one that was at issue before, development of and identification of individuals or entities to implement a plan containing steps to dismantle systemic racism.
But what happens in an let's say it's the sheriff's office, we can't tell the sheriff what to do, or a local police department, like Coconut Creek, for example, has their own police department, some have their own police departments. So when you say implement or help implement, I mean, there has to be an agreement, I guess, from the sheriff's office, I mean,
Well, remember,
Commissioner Bogan, my understanding is that this can recommend changes to the county commission, including recommending groups. If it decides that the Broward Alliance can help implement this because of their ability, or the Bankers Association because of historic problems with getting mortgages and redlining. So this group can recommend those organizations that can help implement this. County Attorney, can you verify my understanding is correct?
I agree with that, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Are there, sometimes, Commissioner, Vice Mayor Udine, I must tell you, sometimes when you play with your pencil, I think that means you're trying to track my attention.
I do want to track your attention.
Okay, this time.
Okay, this time. I'm supportive of this as well, and following on with what Commissioner Bogan said. I think it goes beyond, when you think about it as far as police, I'm not thinking about this as far as law enforcement in any way. That's something separate. What I think about when I read this, and as we were doing this over the past few weeks, there was an article in the paper a couple days ago about the extensive summer slide that we're seeing with our education with this pandemic. And I think that a lot of that is going to play out, unfortunately, along race and socioeconomic lines as we move forward. So these would be like, if they can implement different programming to the children's services counseling for tutoring, different programming to the school board. That's where I see this as we look in the future.
Career
Like
source
red line,
for
career source,
out-of-school
whatever it may
youth.
be. Because I think from when we started talking about this, we've seen the pandemic just make this gap we're trying to close the gap, and I think the pandemic is making this gap much wider. So I'm supportive of it and add that comment.
Commissioner Bogan, so just to clarify Vice Mayor Udin's comments, those different groups that he suggested, it can make those recommendations to the county commission.
And that's the way, I'm sorry. And that's how this
Yes.
item is right now.
That's the current wording of it right now.
I like it.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor, and just for the
I
county attorney.
hope I'm on the list.
I apologize. Yes, Commissioner Fisher, if you don't mind, I had told Senator Rich I would call her after Commissioner Bogan. Senator Rich, you're recognized, ma'am, and I apologize.
That's okay. Out of sight, out of mind. Let me just say that I want to thank Marcia Berry Smith, first of all, for her remarks today, because there are a lot of people that were speaking today without the knowledge of what we are already doing in this community, and coming to speak about what we should be doing. And there are many things that we should be doing, but I would like to, recognize the fact that we have done a great deal, and a lot of the agencies that we are talking about that are now involved in racial equity initiatives are those that have been trained and brought into the fold by our Dismantling Racism initiative. So I want to just put that out there because I think it's really important for people to understand that a lot of work has been done. Now, do we need to move on and do more, expand? Yes. But I want to say that to me, this is not a police review board. And every time that we kind of get into that mode, I get a little concerned because, first of all, as I mentioned, I think that the board is unworkable and unwieldy at the size that it is. And the thought to me of a board like that implementing the plan really makes me nervous because one of the things that we kind of do well in Broward County is try not to duplicate efforts. And we did that when the CSC, when the Children's Services Council was created and we had the Children's Services Board. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't duplicate, that we worked together. And we already have an Office of Racial Equity within the county. And I think that for us to now turn around and say that this task force should implement a plan makes me extremely nervous, and I don't think it's the role for the task force. I think it should be in an advisory capacity like our many other outstanding advisory boards. And so that's what I want to say, and I hope that we will maintain the wording that maintains this in an advisory capacity.
Thank you. Senator Rich, the current wording is now only in an advisory capacity.
Correct.
Okay, I have a question for the county attorney, and then I'm hopeful we'll be able to vote. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fisher, I forgot. Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification to the county attorney that, I hope we get a clean copy of this thing that we're dealing with, but under the section 1-120, the item 16 will now be eliminated. Is that correct? Because of the additional language you had put in C?
Yes, Commissioner. Number 16, I believe that is from Commissioner Holness's amendment, distributed as additional material. The language that was proposed and I believe is accepted by Commissioner Holness in lieu of that is just the change to Part C on page 6, which is lines 8 through 10. And again, the preliminary language there is just development of and identification of individuals or entities to implement a plan containing.
Correct, and that'll be removed, because that really was the cause of the development of the discussion was there, so that'll be removed.
Yes, sir. I mean, unless Commissioner Holness...
Do you understand, Commissioner Holness?
Yes.
Because of that implementation, that number B will be removed.
It's not what I want, but I need to move the agenda.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have one question, County Attorney, on the membership section. the part about representative of communities that have been negatively impacted and organizations that have a role to play in eliminating such racial inequities. I want to clarify that those two are not, you don't have to be both a representative of the communities that have been negatively impacted and an organization, so that somebody like Dan Lindblade or Karen Boutros or Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer are eligible for appointment to this board. Have I read that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any additional questions, debate, or amendments on this item?
Yeah, I have
Senator
one other-
Rich, you're recognized
Mayor,
now.
yeah.
We are now on the item as amended.
Okay, so I have one other question about what is the status of the sunset review, the sunset, because there was an amendment. I don't know if we've taken care of that or not. I agree with Commissioner Holness that there should not be a sunset. There is no sunset date for our other advisory boards. We have systematic reviews at different times where we can change things, add or delete people, and so forth. So I would like to know what the status of that is right now.
Senator Rich, I asked for amendments, and Commissioner Ryan had momentarily left, so he wasn't here to speak on that. But fortunately, since you spoke, he is now returned. So let me again say, are there any amendments? Commissioner Ryan has an amendment. You're recognized, sir.
Currently, the ordinance has a 10-year sunset. My amendment would provide for a 5-year sunset, as correctly referenced by Commissioner Rich in our charter, the Broward County Charter, Section 2.09, with regard to boards. It says that the County Commission shall adopt procedures for the review of the performance of all boards at least every 4 years. And the County Commission will determine which boards are needed to serve the public interest and the cost and the existence to the citizens and the taxpayer, whether that is justified. So I think that because we're adopting a very large board with some rather broad advisory powers, that we may find, when this is reviewed, sometime between now and the next 4 years, that it should continue beyond a 5-year sunset, or we may determine that there's some overlap with other boards and that we feel that its mission will have been accomplished within the 5 years. I believe that it's better to have this 5-year sunset so that a future commission has the authority and the responsibility, if they're going to continue this board, that they should do so. And some people will say, well, you know, you could always sunset this board anyways, but anybody that's been, especially in the Florida legislature, knows that it's so much more difficult to enact something than it is to block a proposal by a member. So I think a 5-year sunset best serves this board so that it can justify its existence, and it's consistent with the 4-year review that we have within the charter. So I ask that the membership adopt this amendment, and I think that this amendment is consistent with the statements and concerns that were stated by Commissioner Rich earlier in the debate on this ordinance in general.
Is there a second to Commissioner Ryan's amendment? Is there a second to Commissioner Ryan's amendment?
I'll give a second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded by Commissioner Bogan. It is now in order for debate on Commissioner Ryan's amendment. Is there any debate?
It truly astounds
me. Okay. Yes.
I'd like
all right, Commissioner Holness, you're recognized. I'm sorry, Senator Rich, did you also want to be recognized?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Commissioner Holness, you're recognized, sir.
I'm going to let Senator Rich go first and let me counter that.
Okay, Senator Rich, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thanks a lot, Commissioner Holness. I'll just go back to what I said. I mean, I don't believe we should treat this task force advisory board any differently than our others. There is always the opportunity for the review, as was mentioned. It's in our charter. And I don't think that it sends a good message that this is the only one that we're going to start right away with a sunset date. So I think that we should just not have one, and let it. And if we see that there are issues, we have the opportunity to review it. And there may be issues, but certainly in 5 years, the need for it won't be over. I can assure you of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rich. Commissioner Holness, you're recognized, sir.
It's astounding to me that we would even have a conversation about this. 400 plus years of brutality, enslavement, discrimination that continues today. And we're going to talk about sunsetting this in 5 years when no other board that we have that requirement? None. In fact, we should remove the 10 years from it rather than debate about cutting it back to 5. Makes no sense at all. It is a slap in the face of people who have suffered to even have a conversation about this.
As Mayor, I would only like to comment that, I'm sorry, Senator?
Well, my thought was not to have 10 years, not to have 5 years, not to have any. It shouldn't have any. So if it needs a motion.
Okay. Senator Rich, we're not going to have cross debate here, so thank you. It is my belief that I would support eliminating this in 5 years because I hope that racism in Broward would go away in 5 years. But since I don't think that would be the case, I will not be supportive on this amendment. Is there, Commissioner Ryan, to close? I say, wait.
Yeah,
is there any?
let me go ahead and close it.
I just want to find out if there's any additional debate, so you can close.
I just want to clarify the purpose in my amendment offering a 5-year sunset is because the sponsor of the ordinance proposed a 10-year sunset, and then you say, oh, it's ridiculous. I can't believe that there's a sunset.
Commissioner Holness, he's talking.
I'm sorry.
Decorum is you allow a member that's recognized has the floor. You placed a 10-year sunset. Because of that, I felt it was important that that be addressed, and so I had offered a 5-year sunset. If you don't agree with me, fine, but when you say it's astonishing that I have a 5-year sunset and you complain about the 10-year sunset that you yourself had offered, I find the argument to be somewhat disingenuous. I will withdraw my amendment, but I do agree with the proposal of the chair that we just not have a sunset provision at all. So then if I can go ahead and revise my amendment to say we remove the language altogether about the sunset, it'll be like every other advisory board. It gets reviewed on a rotating 4-year schedule.
Commissioner Ryan
second that motion.
Commissioner Ryan has amended his amendment to remove the sunset. Are there any questions or debate?
I second the motion.
Seconded by Senator Rich. Is there any debate on this amendment? Commissioner Bogan, were you debating on the amendment to the amendment?
I was going to second the motion that there be no exclusion at all, sunset at all.
It was emotional, but it was emotional.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or debate on the amendment to the amendment? Is there any discussion or debate on the amendment to the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Show the amendment to the amendment adopted. We are now on the amendment as amended.
I make a motion that we adopt the motion as amended.
No, we're on the amendment as amended, Commissioner Ryan's amendment as amended. Is there any discussion or debate on the amendment as amended? If not, all those in favor of the amendment as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
I thought we voted.
Okay. Is there any additional debate or discussion on item number 60? Is there any additional debate or discussion on item number 60?
I make a motion
Seeing
that we...
no additional debate, it is now in order to close. Commissioner Holness, I'm sorry, County Attorney, before Commissioner Holness closes.
Just at some point, if it's the will of the board, I think I've outlined the changes. I just want to make sure everyone understands exactly what we're doing. So I would just appreciate the opportunity for 1 minute to restate it.
Okay, Commissioner Myers, County Attorney Myers, and I will ask, because he's been drafting on the fly, to authorize county attorney to make any necessary technical drafting changes only. Is there any objection? Is there any objection? Show that adopted without objection, giving the county attorney who's drafting on the fly the ability to make any technical drafting amendments. Please explain the bill, the ordinance, as amended.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll ask Renee to jump in if I miss something, but I think I have it. So it's what's printed as Exhibit 1 to your package with the following modifications. You expanded it to 37 members from 35. The 2 new members, one would be nominated by Pride Center, and one would be nominated by Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We modified the nominating entities for numbers 18, 19, and 20 on page 4. Numbers 17 and 21 on page 4 remain categorical positions, but they're nominated by county commissioners. However, adding language that no county commissioner may nominate more than one of those 2 at any one time. And then we revised language, and this is the most substantive change, in 1-120C. That was the language that confirms that
Commissioner Bogan, this is the point you were asking about.
That it's purely advisory, and it's the language that I read into the record. And finally, the sunset provision on page 7 has been deleted.
Does everybody understand the ordinance as amended? And I see running up, we're going to put a hold on this till the county attorney confirms there was nothing left out.
Just to make sure, there was also, I think, let me just confirm that it was covered by 17 is, okay, so yeah, it is covered. It's the chamber amendment number 18. It is covered. I think it's read just as stated. Yes.
Okay. So, does everybody understand the county attorney's description? Is there any additional debate? If not, Commissioner Holness, you're recognized to close on your ordinance.
Let me thank all of you for your input. Let me thank all the speakers that spoke and all the entities that have been undergoing this work for a good amount of time. I think this brings us a entity that is identifying a cross-section of Broward County to bring together a group that will then identify issues that we face in terms of inequities, disparities within our community, bring about policy recommendation, identify those who would be able to implement and encourage implementation across the board of the solutions that we know can work, and some of it is already working. We need to continue this and to do even more. And with that, I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance as amended.
Second.
All those in favor of approving ordinance or item number 60, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Show it adopted by unanimous vote with 2 commissioner absent? 1 commissioner absent. Show that adopted by a unanimous vote of the commissioners present. All right, now, first, let me ask about lunch. It's almost exactly 1 o'clock. If there's reconvening at 2 o'clock, give sufficient time. 2:15. I'd like to make it as short as possible, but I will do whatever you want. 2 or 2:15. 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock.